Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. God is faithful. Can I get an amen? Amen. That's kind of our theme of today, and it's amazing to see such a packed house after a long season of being separated. I just want to start by saying a huge thank you, like Laurel mentioned, for those of you that are new to Fort Garry. Fort Garry actually has been supporting us since 2000, the year 2000, a long, long time ago when we first mobilized as church planters with a team called Team 2000. And so I just want to say a huge thank you for that. You've sent many teams over the years and visitors. How many here have been to Thailand? Can you put up your hand? Okay, fantastic. I don't know if you've all come to us, but you're welcome. Anytime. We've gotten lots of backpackers and all kinds of different people, and so we feel really connected here. You've also adopted one of our church plants called Zion Church on Monkey Mountain. Gideon and Phone are our pastoral couple there with their little son named Shalom, who's one, and that's meant a lot to Gideon and Phone to actually know that there's one church in the middle of Canada that is actually looking at them as a sibling in the work of the kingdom. So thank you for that. Today we're just going to share some mission stories for you, hopefully encourage you, and just to keep reiterating that God is faithful. And so we're actually looking at John 6, 1 to 14, but for time's sake, I'm just going to really quickly summarize it. I think we all know that passage. It's where the disciples and Jesus go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus says to Philip, hey, where are you going to feed all these thousands of people? 5,000 men, so maybe 15,000 people altogether in verse 5. And right after that, my favorite part is Jesus asked that because he was testing him. And he knew already what was going to happen. And then later in verse 14, we see the culmination of the miracles of him increasing the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes into extra 12 baskets after feeding these 15,000 people. And so kind of the name of our message today is meeting, movement, and miracles. And that came out partly because over the years, as we've been coming back to North America, one of the questions we get asked all the time is, why are there so many miracles and things like deliverances and that kind of thing in Thailand? And how come we don't necessarily see that here in our Western context? And so we've spent a lot of time just praying about that and thinking about that. We have some of our own theories. I think part of it is that sometimes when you get to another culture and you are completely dependent on God, he shows up in miraculous ways. But in this passage, we actually see some really key things that Jesus is asking us to do. So the first one is to meet Jesus and to keep that relationship with him strong and know that he is the center of everything we do. Out of that, we're going to see that Jesus invites us to move. There's a movement that he invites us to do, and it's for all of us. It's not just, if you live in Thailand or if you've got the label of missionary, but there's a movement that Jesus invites us to do. And so something God's put on our hearts lately in the last few years is this concept of prophetic imagination his name is Dr. Walter Bergman. I just wanted to throw that in there so I look really knowledgeable. But anyway, he came up with this concept many years ago where you actually invite Jesus into whatever moment that you're in. So it's actually using that prophetic invitation to Jesus to go, what would Jesus imagine for this encounter? And so one way that I've really felt challenged to do this, we've been in Thailand total now of 27 years, and it can get very routine. And so one little thing that God has asked me to do is every time we go to Bangkok, I'm in taxis all over the place. It's better than driving. And he's just invited me to go, what would it look like if I actually just talked to my driver instead of being on my phone and invited the story of Jesus into that little interaction. And so that has blown my mind in the sense of just by asking a little question like, hey, have you ever heard of Jesus? Or have you ever been to a church in a context like Thailand, which is still 0.5% believers? It has opened up this opportunity for me to share Christ and to have this deeply engaging spiritual conversation, and sometimes to pray for the driver when we get to our destination. And so I just want to, the last part of the series, the sermon title is Meeting, Movement, and Miracles. And so I just want to share a couple stories with you. The first story is about a little girl named Prim. And we, like Laurel said, we have opened a home for HIV orphans about 16 years ago. And this little girl in the middle, Prim, came to us about 3 years ago. And so a social worker had found her. She was kind of locked in a shack all day, lying on the ground with a bowl of food on the floor, just watching TV for 12 hours or so when the adults in the home were out working. And so she ended up coming to us, and she could not walk. She couldn't use the bathroom. She couldn't talk. And it was amazing to see the kids around her kind of get this prophetic imagination for what God might do. They had read the Bible. They knew the good Bible stories that Jesus heals and does miracles today still. And so this is Prim. In the beginning, I will say, Prim was not excited, to say the least, about any invitation to move. She was very happy. Ricky would often have to kind of put her over his shoulder to get her to different places that we were going. And the invitation of God was to move. And then after that, we would see the miracle. So it was amazing to see the kids come around her. If you show the next picture, we kind of convinced her to get, we got this wheelchair, and it was a big step. It was bigger than just laying on the floor watching TV all day. And then in this little short video, you can see her thanking God for the next step that God asked her to take.
Go, Prim, go. Go, Prim, go. ทำได้ซื่อๆเก่งมากค่อยๆตรงทำได้1 2 3โอ้ไม่เป็นไรเริ่มใหม่ลุกขึ้นใหม่ไปต่อตั้งใจเก่งมากโอ้โหจะเก่งขนาดนี้ขอบคุณพระเจ้าไหม
So that's Prim. Wrong state thing. And when she's raising her hands in Thailand, when you say thank you, God, you put your hands way up and you say Khop Kun Phat Jalao. And now at church, at Zion Church, if you ever want to extend your services by about 4 hours, you just do open mic if you're interested. Every Sunday. And so she'll get the mic, and we all know at least 10 minutes she's going to go. So she's talking, she's walking, she's going to school for the first time. But it took this huge yes for her to experience these miracles in her life that Jesus wanted to do for her, and to say yes to the movement that he was inviting her to do. So the next story I want to share with you is about one of our guys named June. He's there beside me on this side. And he was one of the first 5 boys that we got into our orphanage many years ago. And to this day, we've had over 100 kids come through our homes. And to this day, our staff knows that if we ever talk about like the hardest kid, the behavior that pushed us to the edge, you name it, burning things, running away, whatever, it was June. And so even nowadays, if we are feeling down in our staff meetings, we'll all be kind of downhearted, and someone will go, but June. And so if you go to the next picture, after high school, June worked in a factory for a couple years, and I just had this growing sense that even though he didn't do great in high school, and there was a lot of hard things, that God actually had a call in his life. So a couple years after high school, I went to his little apartment. He was living with a bunch of roommates, and I just said, hey, June, do you think God might be calling you to a Bible school? There's a 4-year college, and if you want to go, basically in 2 days, we're going to leave at this time for the airport and just be there if you want to go. And he was like, oh, I can't go. I'm June. And so he began to talk to his roommates and his church, and everyone said, No, you don't do that. You're June. And so it took this huge effort on his part to actually believe prophetically in what God was asking him to do, this movement to pack up his stuff, leave his roommates, leave the home that he had lived in and the city that we all lived in, and go to Bible college. And so when we were waiting we had about 4 kids going to Bible college. We didn't know if June would show up or not. And all of a sudden, sure enough, last minute, rides in on his motorbike. He's got a little bag, and he's like, let's go before I change my mind. So we go this is us at the airport, actually. And he hadn't told his roommates, hadn't told his church. He was just like, I'm going to go in faith and trust that God is going to come through and he's going to do a miracle in our life. So the next picture is June preaching. And in January, he's going to graduate from 4 years in Bible college. And this guy, if you want to believe in miracles, the physical healing is amazing to watch, but honestly, his life is this transformed reminder that God does miracles. So this guy now, he can preach, he can teach, he can do children's ministry, he leads worship, basketball ministry, evangelism, you name it. He's got the whole package, and he this constant reminder, right, that as Jesus invites us to move out of our comfort zone and to something that even everyone around us says, there's no way you can do that. That's scary, or you're not designed for that. God actually shows up and does a beautiful miracle. The last story I wanted to talk about was Di. If you can see her there. Di was born in the fishing village that we live in Angsila, Thailand, into a very, very poor home, kind of shuttled around from relative to relative, lots of abuse, lots of poverty, no inside plumbing, kind of quit school at grade 8. And we met her right when we moved to Thailand, and she wanted to learn English. So I started teaching her the Bible in English, and then when we opened the orphanage, we needed a night nanny. And so she came in, and she fell in love with one of the babies that we had. We had 2 babies at the time, and the one that she was taking care of was very, very sick. And so she decided to fast and pray for 10 days until the blood test we were getting to see if maybe he was going to be HIV negative, and say to Jesus, hey, I'm a Buddhist. I'm fasting and praying as a Buddhist. But if you heal Apilak, was his name, then I'm going to give my life to you. And so we quickly sent out hundreds and hundreds of prayer letters saying, hey, don't just pray for Apilak, but wow, this girl is putting her faith on the line and is saying, okay, God, are you going to do a miracle? And he was inviting her to fast and pray, and she asked me, like, how does that work? I'm a Buddhist, and I'm like, oh, I have no clue. I have no clue, but I know God hears the cries of his children. And so sure enough, on that day 10, we went to the hospital. We got this miraculous test that he was no longer HIV positive. And so that night, she came to work, and she called me, and she's like, hey, I'm ready to accept Christ. And so I said, no, I have to watch my show. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Rushed over there, 11 o'clock at night, and this is probably 16 years ago now. And those 5 little boys and us, we were sitting on the ground with our Bibles, and she gave her heart to Christ. And so fast forward a bit, we were able to send her to a YWAM school in northern Thailand. And while she was there, they were doing a quiet time, and they're asking God for a picture of something that he wanted to impart to them. And so she painted this beautiful picture of her walking over this scary, rickety, swinging bridge, a rope bridge, into from a dark ravine with people, with 12 children holding hands behind her, all girls, and going over this ravine into a beautiful green mountainous area with this gorgeous house on the other side, all lit up. And so she came back from YWAM and didn't have a job. She had been gone for a while, and all of a sudden, the house mom of our girls' home got TB. And the doctor said, with the nature of what you're doing, she can't actually ever come back. And so here was Di. She had just gotten back from YWAM, and so she was like, okay, I'll do it for a little bit. And so she goes to be a mom of the girls' home, and she's been there ever since, 16 years later. And God has given her over 30 kids. Sometimes she'll have 12 little girls in her home taking care of them. And that picture, that prophetic imagination that God gave her in YWAM keeps coming back to her and saying, yeah, I'm going to keep saying yes to these beautiful girls that God keeps bringing us. So the next picture is her. As if 12 girls at a time wasn't enough for her, she also said, hey, I think I want to go back to high school. She ended up finishing her high school degree. Then she did a 2-year college, and then she came and she said, hey, would you help me get a BA? So this is her graduating from 2 years of college. She's right now finishing her 3rd year, And she will be the first person in her entire family to have completed high school and then now is almost completing a BA. She also started 2 small businesses in our orphanage that employ our teenagers, so they make some extra money. And she's also putting her husband through Bible school. So he's done a year and a half. So she is an amazing go-getter. This is the next picture. And there she is in the middle. She looks like one of the kids. But she is just this constant reminder to us that when we say yes and we embrace that prophetic imagination that God gives us, he saw something in both. Jesus saw something both in Prim, June, and Thai. And he's inviting us to not only say yes to the movement that he's asking us to do, to move out in faith if we want to see miracles that he readily does everywhere in the world, but also to see that in other people and invite them to say yes to the movement that he's asking them to do. So we're going to move on to Ricky's sharing time with a short video. Thank you very much.
So the ministry I started back in 2009, it's morphed into a lot of different names, but today we call it Global Sports Basketball. My dream was, when I started this, is to bring people from North America through sports, and that would be our platform to get into countries. And my heart was always to bless the church. Through that, I met this great academy called KOB Academy, and we've partnered now together. These kids, they're going to go to school, so they live right here in 2 little rooms, and there's 50 boys just on mats on the floor. The expectation is they're going to go to school, they're going to do good on the grades, and for the basketball piece, they practice every day. They got to be ready to come play, and then they join tournaments, and they play all over Thailand, and they've been really successful in 3-on-3 and team tournaments. Out of the 50 plus boys that are here, there's only 1 boy that's a Christian. Some of them come from really bad homes, most of them come from poverty, and it's been really neat to be a part of something that's really grassroots from the beginning. Kids really are hungry to learn basketball, but we're using this platform to teach them more than just basketball. Teach them about life, and in that life we want them to know Jesus. So we share the gospel with them weekly. They're learning Bible verses. We've had a pizza party. We're starting to bring some to church. We often pray to end our time together. I've been able to just come in and have a lot of fun with these kids. The more we can do that here, the more they have a chance to actually accept Christ. So part of my heart is to also supplement, help a little bit. So we've donated basketball. Every week we give prizes to the kids. We do drills where when they make something, it's just like we give them 100 baht, sometimes 20 baht, which is only $1 or a few dollars. And the coaches told me that really helps them because they don't really have any spending money besides what he gives them. I want to get a sports court here donated so that they can have just a better system, better lighting, just small things like that that can really help this and help the community also. So the last thing I just want to say is just remember these kids' faces. Remember to pray for these kids. You can make a difference if you pray for these kids, because again, many of them don't know who Jesus is. But with your prayers and us coming in here and helping with basketball, we can partner together, and that someday these kids will get to know Jesus. And even better yet, someday you can come here and meet these kids. So I invite you to pray about actually coming here and seeing the work that God is doing. Thanks so much. Those are my boys. I miss them. We've been here since June, and every time I see a video, I get a little teary-eyed because it's neat how God works. You know, during this pandemic, I was praying about, Lord, what do you want for me next? I coach my girls. There's my girls, and the next picture you can see, they've all played basketball. A couple of them have actually even played college basketball, which I did, and that's part of my testimony is I came to Christ through basketball, and I met this wonderful, godly woman named Karen,
and the rest is history. So for me, it's always been a part of my life. Well, when pandemic hits, everything shuts down like it did here. And so I asked God, what's next? And so God just said to pray. So I was meeting with Jesus. And in that meeting, I felt like God just said to go. Go and do some prayer walks. Go and do some drive. We like driving and praying. So I went into a community that I rarely go into. And as I was driving through that praying, I saw this basketball court. And I thought, I've never seen a court like this, right inside its poor community. And I thought, I wonder if there's some basketball here. And as I prayed, I came back the next day, and all of a sudden I see all these boys. Ended up talking with them, and they said, oh, can you come and coach us? And this is right after 10 years of coaching my gals for varsity basketball. And so I met with Jesus. God told me to move, and the miracle is really I met these boys. So my dream in this is to share my faith. Like, that's how I came to Christ. And so basketball is just a part of what I do. It's a platform to really share Jesus with people. And so we started a ministry called Global Sports that we do every couple of years. We're trying to expand that a bit and make it be soccer, volleyball, and basketball. But for now, the Lord has really used basketball. So we've been doing it since 2009, 12 years now. And we've brought many teams to bless our MB churches around the world. But right now, we're focused in Asia, but we'd love to go all over the place, wherever God would lead us. So as we were watching that video, I was reminded again of God's faithfulness. So if you know us, 20 years ago in this stint, we've been, like Karen said, 27 years with our mission and 20 plus years in Thailand. And so when we went with a team called Team 2000. And some people said, is this going to work? I think all of us said, is this going to work? As we were on that airplane with kids, really young kids on a 16-hour airplane trip is not the best idea on how to start your mission. But we somehow made it through that plane ride, landed on the other side, and said, okay, God, what's next? We trust that you are faithful and that you've called us here. So 20 plus years later, I'm happy to report, we started with 3 MB churches. Started with the Khmu work in the north. It's a tribal group that we've been a part of. Our mission has been a part of Multiply since 1994. And through that, we've expanded the work now to include 28 churches in all of Thailand. So those would be Khmu churches, those would be Thai churches, those would be Cambodian, it's kind of our newest church, and also churches from Myanmar in Thailand. So a lot of the people from Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, are coming over now because they're having a civil war there. So more and more people are coming, and we get to share Jesus with them. So we have teams working with those different ministries. So what we do is we church plant. Karen talked about standing strong, ministry to women at risk of the sex trade. So we take women in now to help them and not just their kids. In the past, we would just take their children, and we thought we don't want to make more orphans, so why don't we actually help the women, giving them a job training. All of them have come to Christ as they come through our orphanage because so many people there, they see these women and they just kind of grab onto them and love on them, and within weeks these women are all becoming Christians. So it's really neat to see these former prostitutes now serving God. We also love when teams come. So I want to encourage you as this church prays. You've been there, some of you, but maybe God is calling you. Maybe God is saying it's time to step out of your comfort zone. And as you hear these stories and you hear maybe God saying to you, maybe the comfort zone will be right here in Winnipeg, being involved with something that the church is doing for outreach. I'm a big champion of saying, if you can't do it here, don't expect to do it there. And so start with something small. And for some of us, that's going to mean just remembering God's faithfulness and saying, okay, Lord, you've been faithful my whole life, but can you really reach my friend, the neighbor I've known for 20 years and still does not know Jesus, not even maybe that much closer. Maybe it's a coworker that you've worked with and you've shared a little bit, but maybe now it's time for you to pray, really meet with Jesus, and move in that direction where God wants to use your life to maybe do a miracle. And so the miracles, often for me, we think about what Karen said. You think of physical miracles, a lot of that happens in Thailand. Most of our people, we'd say 80% of the people that have come to Christ have been through a vision or dream. And they come to us and they said, last night I had a dream and I saw a man in a white robe and he said, follow me. We've had that many times. And I'm thinking, man, if that's not God inviting these people, then what is it? And so often we get to pray with people with that and we say, hey, come and let us share what maybe that means. And so I think the biggest miracle is still and always will be when God reaches down and changes a heart. I think of my life, and without somebody actually telling me about Jesus, I'm not here today on this stage. See, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I grew up really in a ghetto, and I knew that there was more to life, but I didn't know what that meant. So for some reason, God used basketball. I happen to be tall for a Hispanic guy, and that helps to be tall in a sport that wants tall guys. And so I went to school, but I wanted nothing to do with this religion. But God was faithful, and he got a hold of my heart. And so it took merely a few weeks before I knew I needed this Jesus that I was seeing all over this campus, this Christian school, Fresno Pacific. It's one of our MB schools. And so as I think about today, God is still in the business of doing these miracles all over the place. But maybe he's asking us to take a leap, literally a leap, out of our comfort zone and to say, God, can you use me still today for one of your miracles? And changed lives are the biggest miracle that God still does today. And that is happening all over the place, not just Thailand. And sure, we'd love to see somebody come to you, and wouldn't it be cool if somebody came to you and said, hey, I had a vision, and a guy came to me in a white robe. But maybe that person is coming to you and say, I just need help. I'm short on groceries this week. Hey, my dad just died. Would you just pray for me? Maybe there's some people who just during this COVID have said, I'm just feeling like depressed. And God is saying, maybe you're that one person that can reach into that soul and God could use for a miracle. So I want to encourage you. I want to invite the worship team back up. And as we close, I want to invite you to trust in God and ask God, Lord, what are you calling me to? As we come out of this pandemic, hopefully soon, we're the new normal, I guess. We're still wearing masks and we're still having to do certain things, but there's so many hurting people all around us. And I want to encourage you to really ask God to meet with Jesus, to ask him how to move, and then to pray for that miracle, because God is faithful. If he can do it in Thailand, and he can do it in the life of an inner city kid from Oakland, he can surely do it in your life. So I'm going to end with this passage. It's found in Psalm 16. Therefore, my heart is glad, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful ones see decay. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. We serve a good God. And I encourage you to pray and ask God, Lord, what is the miracle you're asking me to be a part of? Thank you.